Hello there, and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Shannon Emery, an experienced community professional who's living life and trying to survive, but also somebody after a conversation with whom you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, hello, Shannon.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to talk about the quotes you just used too. I was like, wow, the best intro I've ever had.
Let's start from that. So, what is the first one you'd like to talk about?
So it's actually funny. I grew up very close to my mom's parents, so my grandparents. And there came a time when my grandfather got really sick, right? So he was sick for a long time. And so I would call every other day. And I still do this with my grandma just to check in, see how things are going. I'm lucky enough to have her. But I used to call and be like, Grandpa, how's it going? He'd be like, trying to survive, right? And this was grandpa's like tagline, right? And that just meant I'm here, I'm doing the thing, and I'm lucky enough to be alive today, right? And so it's a running joke in the family. And when you call and you're like, well, how's it going? I'm just trying to survive. And some days that means really just trying to survive, or it's like, yeah, things are doing well. So yeah, that's one of my life mottos is just trying to survive. Yeah.
How do you understand like what exactly trying to survive it is?
Oh yeah, it's usually the tone, right? Like, what are you dealt with today? Was it
Wow.
work problems? Was it life problems? And just generally, that's what all we're doing, right? We get up every day and we survive, or we try to survive throughout the day. And my grandfather had a very baseline metric. I say things in corporate speak, right? Of what life success was. And so for him, he was just trying to survive when he was sick, right? But you can also call, and some days he'd be in a better mood, or things would be, a little worse that day. You could always tell by the tone, like, oh, okay, how you feeling? How you really feeling? Then he'd get into it. But yeah, that's just the running joke of the family is you call and you say, I'm just trying to survive. So I hope to have it as a tattoo one day, and put it on myself as a permanent reminder. But yeah, that's that. And I'm also living life, right? We do have to live. We get the opportunity. If you wake up, go live your life, right? Not everybody can say that. So yeah.
Ta- Talking about tattoos, what's coming up in Italy?
Ooh, so like I said, I'm very close to my grandparents, and so I actually just recently, and I know you probably can't see it. Me and my wife got our wedding tattoo, which is
Mhm.
a shared tattoo we have. So the problem is I've had a couple of other tattoos. I just couldn't see them, right? Like I can't actually see the ones that I have on my body on a daily basis. I know they're there. They mean a lot to me, but I don't see it. But now I can see this one. So now the problem is I want more, right? So my wife, she studied classics in college.
Mhm.
And so going to Rome is a huge deal for her. Like she's super excited, very nerdy about it. It's super cute. I'm excited as well. Okay, but she's like, she's a huge book nerd, so she's going to have a Latin phrase tattooed on her in Rome. And I said,
Mhm.
well, you can't get a tattoo if I can't get a tattoo. So I'm taking another one of my favorite phrases from my grandmother, and I shortened it a little bit. So we're going to have a little script on my arm that says, look for the sweetness, because she's been known to say life is hard, life is short, but girl, life is sweet. Always look for the sweet. So I want to take that as a reminder because it is important to look for the good in life, even when things are can be hard. It's not easy, but it's a good reminder to look for that. So basically, I just had to make sure the wife wasn't getting a tattoo without me.
Okay,
So
got it,
yeah,
got it, got it.
but that will be very important to me, right? I've gotten to the age where tattoos shouldn't just be for fun; they need to mean something. So I'm super excited about that, and so is the wife. She's like, super excited about hers. But yeah, we love to travel, so it'll be a good way to mark the trip as well.
Look for the sweetness. Like, what does it mean for you?
For me, to me, it's looking for the small things, the small good things in life, right? So the other day, I was sitting on the couch, Sunday morning. My wife plays with the dog every morning. We have a cute little dog. Well, she's not really little, but she's stumpy. She's like short. And so they were playing, and I just looked up. I was reading a book, and I just watched her for a few minutes. And in that moment, she was giggling, laughing. The dog was playing. And it was a moment of sweetness, right? That
Yeah.
sometimes you forget to look for those things, right? It doesn't have to be the big things. It could be the little things, or watching, my nieces or nephews like grow up in the world and watching them explore things and discover them. And then it's also a good reminder to look for that in other people who aren't close to you, because a lot of sweet things do happen in the world. We just don't give them the attention. We're always looking for the bigger, badder things, or they make the noise, not the sweetness. So, but my grandmother's always said that. She's like, life is hard, but look for the sweetness. And it has helped me. Not everybody can do that, and I get that. So I try to be, cautious on how I share that with people. But for me, it's looking for the little things, the moments that'll make you smile without you thinking about it.
Yeah. I have something like that. My wife also went to Rome. Like
Cool.
it was some working trip,
Yeah.
and then she returned with this small bottle opener, and like it was like the best present I had, you know?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like phone, like I don't know, headphones, all the stuff. Like who cares? But this unexpected small gift, the best thing ever, you know?
Right. Do you carry it around with you? That's like your
Yeah,
little
it's
bottle.
on my
Yep.
car keys, and I'm always using it to open a bottle of Pepsi or cola. It depends. Like,
It depends on the day, right?
yeah,
Your opening. But I mean, what about it that was exciting for you to get it? I mean, it's a gift from your wife, but like,
yeah, sure, definitely. And also, it's like very solid. So it's
Mhm.
like hard. It's like from the one piece of metal, and it's from
Okay.
Rome, and it's
Oh,
useful, you know.
yeah.
So I have this thing like we bought to our kids from in Berlin. Like
Oh,
it's
nice.
just something, but it's solid, you know. It's like hard. You
Hmm.
can really feel it when you
Yeah.
take it. So yeah, and
Very
definitely,
good.
it always reminds me about those small moments, like when I can be happy, just
Right.
unexpected something like I didn't ask, you know, like
For her to bring anything back, but she
yeah, just
did.
bring yourself back, you know?
Right?
Like
You're like, just come on home. That would have been enough, right? But she thought about you, and she knew that you'd like something practical, something heavy that you could hold, right? That's a sweet moment. Somebody remembered you. Yes, I mean, it's your wife, so that makes a little bit more sense. But we encounter those moments when people do little things like that for us who aren't family or close friends. One of my favorites was a community member brought me a gift to a conference. To this day, I still use it, right? It was a very practical gift, but she was like, you're so excited. I was like, you didn't have to bring me this, right? And so every time I travel, I turn it into my shoe bag, right? It was a little tote bag. And I was like, no, I carry it every time. And it's just those moments, right, that we forget or we take for granted, right? But I'll always remember her, and she was just wanting to show appreciation. And I now have a shoe bag, right, that goes everywhere with me, and it's practical. I say too, I think when people bring you practical gifts, you get a lot more use out of them. You get those little reminders a lot more often too.
yeah, you know,
Yeah,
it's always about like when having this swag conversation, what should we give them another t-shirt or another cup? Like, why
right.
don't give them key holder or like why don't give them an umbrella, something they will always use? Like, nah,
Exactly.
let's just go with t-shirt, you know, like
The t-shirts.
or a pen.
Um, No, isn't it? Yeah, why don't we think what would somebody actually want to use? A t-shirt's great. Like, don't get me wrong. Most people like t-shirts. But I always wonder that, or why isn't it a little bit more personalized, to who you're talking to? Those are things I look for as well when I try to give out the swag. I mean, granted, it gets a little expensive, but
Totally, totally, totally.
it's a good
And
good thought, right?
what about the next part, about the light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, so I've been doing because I've been on a break. So for those watching this, I've been on like a 6 month mental health break is what I'm calling it. People started calling it a sabbatical, a lot of people applauded it, and I applauded it myself, right? I was burning out. I didn't like doing what I was doing. My members were affected by it. My performance
Mm.
was. And so I told myself, I just want to share. I've always been that person. I just want to share my knowledge. I might share my experiences, what I do. So maybe somebody else will learn from it, right? I don't say I'm an expert. I say we're all kind of figuring it out together. But one of the people I'm working with, and I won't share names, she said that to me at the end of our meeting together. She's a new community professional. And she's like, every time we talk, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Um, and as somebody, like you were saying earlier, who doesn't like to be in the spotlight, who doesn't want to be the one, I was like, oh, wow, right? Like, okay, right. I was like, thank you. I've learned, I've gotten a lot better at thanking people for compliments and rolling with it. But at the same time, I was shocked, right? Like, I'm like, okay. And I continue to work with her in the same way. And we're getting to where she's getting it. She's moving along. She's taking ownership of everything. And to me, I'm more excited about her success. But when she said that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go cry in the corner now because maybe I am doing this the right way. It was a little validation for sharing that knowledge and expertise, and watching somebody do it, right? Like that's always the fun part.
And at least you didn't turn away and like, who are you talking to? Like,
Right? Are you talking to me? Well, I mean, on a Zoom, that would be a bit weird, right? Are you talking to my wife or my dog on the bottom?
yeah.
But yeah, it is those moments. And you've probably encountered that too. Even listening to somebody else, talking with them and learning from them, you're like, oh, that makes more sense now, right? But I always say we're better together than we are alone. So even having one person say that makes my day. And yeah, I put it on Twitter because it was a good day.
Once again, talking about Twitter and your wife. So in your introduction on Twitter, it's like married to a screaming fox. Why
Yeah.
so?
So my wife is not a big Twitter person. I don't even know if her account's there anymore. She just had this random account and it was literally a picture. Her last name's Fox, so this makes more sense when you know her last name. But she had a picture of a screaming fox as her avatar. And her intent when she first joined Twitter was just a place for her to rant about things, right? Like politics. She's very aware of those things, if it's societal stuff. And eventually she stopped posting and whatnot. And so, but she'll interact with my post if I don't even know if she's still on there. I should check. But like she would interact with my post and people are like, who is this person? I was like, that's my wife. And because my name is Llama, people are like, well, she's a fox. Shouldn't she also be a llama? And I was like, it's a whole story. So, but I say that because that connects me to her Twitter without actually at mentioning her, since I do use it for more of a professional stuff. But she does like to go in to see what I posted because I do talk about her a lot on. So she's like, I'm gonna go see what you're talking about and make sure it's approved. Not really, but but yeah, so she's the screaming fox in the bio for
Got
sure.
it. And how did you feel celebrating your first 500 days after marriage?
Wow. It was surreal. We've been together for a very long time. So the marriage was just the official step, right? Like it's a kind of the documentation, the big party for the family and friends. But it felt good because roughly around the same time I was about to celebrate my best friend's wedding, right? So like it felt pertinent. It felt important at the time to sit back. But time has just flown by, and even though we're married, the only thing that's really changed is our taxes. So yeah, how we do, formal documents and all of that has changed too. But yeah, I married her for a reason. I didn't want to have to change after we got married, so we have it. We're still the same people, living life together. But it was great. I was like, "Ooh, I did it!" Like, yeah. So we're,
Batch
she's like, "We're
500 days.
500 days of marriage." But I always laugh because she also works in corporate. So I was like, do you want like a quarterly review of our marriage? Do you want OKRs? She's like, obviously not. But we do set goals and stuff. But yeah, in the 500 days, it was good to be married. I think we're up to 560 something this week. So I've got a little timer. I'm that person. So I got a little timer going. But yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Ooh, Clay and Carol. So I know my parents actually don't come up a lot in my social channels. But my parents they're like an interesting couple, right? So my family actually, my mother's family immigrated to America in the 80s. And so they're from Guyana, which is a small country on the east coast of the South American continent. And so they came over in the 80s, and my dad was working at the same construction company as my grandfather and my uncles were at the time. Um, I'd say my mom was pretty young. My parents were super young, so it was interesting to grow up with really young parents. But my dad apparently saw my mom and was like, I need to meet her, right? And my mom, of course, had zero interest in meeting anybody. And he like finally got up his courage to like, because she, in their culture, there's a lot of family interaction. Like she would bring my grandfather lunch, stuff like that. So she was there pretty constantly. So he finally got up his courage to go talk to her, called her the wrong name, but then asked her out on a date. Um, they were very poor. Like they were not these, I don't come from affluent people. So their very first date was at the 7-Eleven where they got nachos and drinks. And to this day, my mom will say, he actually didn't buy me my nachos. Yeah, they ended up getting pregnant with me and getting married. And so I come from a dual cultural background. Like I come from a home where I was raised with a lot of Guyanese traditions, a lot of different words and different ways of saying things. And then kind of this interesting American perspective of like, coming from a lower income background and fighting your way to get to where you need to be. So I always tell people I'm kind of always in the middle between the two of them. But I have nothing. They're very good people. Like you don't get me without them having some input, into what this turned out to be like. But they're very smart. My father is an extraordinarily smart individual. My mom is sharp as a tack. But I have to say, they always instilled, and I'll say it to sound corny too, a sense of community. We survive as a family better together than we do apart. And everything around my childhood and teenage years was always around that, centered very much in the family. So yeah, they're good folks. They are hilarious and have their own issues. So when I tell people that, they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, everybody has issues. It's not like they're
Totally.
perfect." But I can go to them at any point. Now, me and my father, as much as I look like, we're too much alike, right? So we end up arguing a lot of the time. So nothing like facetious or malicious. It's just one time we argued about whether Paris Hilton was a moral figure, things like that, because he knows he could push my buttons. And my mom is one of my best friends and one of my role models. So I can go to her with anything. I've watched her struggle in this country. I've seen her do a lot, and she always puts me and my brother ahead of her, right? Like I have nothing but amazing things to say about her and where she's come from. But dad, me and him can fight all day. But that is what it is. Everybody's like, you're a mama or what is it, a daddy's girl? I'm like, oh no. I am probably my father's nightmare sometimes. But he raised me this way. That's what I told him. I was like, you raised me like this. You can't be mad. You
Yeah,
can't be.
it's your own
Um,
problem. Deal
yeah,
with
it's not my
it.
fault. I'm stubborn, and you made me sure I could speak up. So, but he gets it though. He's always like, okay, I see why. And his biggest influence is he said, one, learn from our mistakes, raising the two of you, moving through life together. He's like, but secondly, be happy. He's like, I don't care what else you do, what kind of money you make, you have to be happy. And so I've done that. And I can say he's proud of me. We'll still fight about Paris Hilton, but at the end of the day, I do come from really great parents, and I'm very, very lucky for that reason.
So you've already told me about being happy, but what about making mistakes? Do you ever afraid of making them?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. All day, every day, right? I wouldn't be human if I wasn't afraid of making mistakes. Um, but I've learned you can't live in the fear, right? Like you got to be able to go do it. And things, and I used to say, oh, I'll try to live my life without regrets. And sometimes mistakes are regrets, but I've learned that you can't live in those regrets, right? You have to learn from that mistake or failure and maybe try to do better next time, or maybe not try to do it again. There are some things you just shouldn't do again. So, and if people are often confused by that, because I tend to come off as very happy, perky. It's because I've learned and moved through those mistakes. But yes, my stomach hurts. I warm up. I get weird. I ramble. And I have a very loud, nervous laugh. So if I'm about to do something that I think is may end up in a mistake, whew, it is a day. People are like, you seem so calm. I'm like, I'm so warm right now. I could die. But also on the other side of moving through those feelings of failure, right, is very important, to understand what that feels like and sort of acknowledge it. And so saying, how can I fix this? How can I fix this? Has become important to me. That could be from having conversations with friends where it didn't go well to projects I had really hoped would do the thing and they didn't end up working out so well. Um, but yeah, somebody wise once told me, work through that, don't work around it. And you learn a lot, right? If you couldn't tell, I learn a lot from the people around me. Right? Like I know, I'm like a philosophy bug who just like people tell me things like, "Oh, that's good." But yeah, so no, definitely. If you ever see me like sweating, red faced, like hyperventilating, something has gone horribly awry. I'm trying to figure out what that is. But yeah.
And still, do you regret about something?
Um, in work life, I try not to, right? Because I've actually the decisions I've made there, and because of the background I come from, there wasn't a lot of guidance on what to do in like work. It was you're gonna go to college, go find something that you like to do. But my parents didn't go to college. They eventually got their degrees as they brought us up, but they didn't have the whole same experience, and so there are big things I regret there. There might have been actions, conversations, or stuff that I wish had gone better. But in work life, not so much. On the other side, though, of personal life, yes, absolutely. Right. Because to me, a lot of those relationships are a lot deeper. Those choices that I make to affect my overall life. And I tell people, and I apologize to my wife every time. I was like, I wish I had had the courage to come out a lot sooner. So that way I would have been my full self. I was like, but I don't know in today's world that's a regret. That's a personal mine, right? Like I wish I had not spent so much time avoiding that part of myself. So now I'm a full-on one-woman lesbian parade, queer parade, because I'm like, well, we're just gonna make up for it on this side, right? We're gonna be fully myself. But very few, I will have to say. And the other ones are a lot. People will be like, well, that's very small, and I'd be like, yeah, but it was important at the time. But yeah, you should have some regrets, right? If you've lived a perfect life, you're not gonna know that it was perfect if you don't have any regrets.
You have to have a reason for eat a whole bunch
Yeah.
of ice cream sometimes,
Right, that too. You need to have a reason to order pizza, my friend, and be sad and watch a sad movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, everybody has regrets. I mean, I'm sure you do too, right? Like it's not does it just one person or another. Not that you need to share your deep formed regrets.
Yeah, like I just have very similar mindset. So like I have this mindset that like why regretting something if I can learn from it and make something better or do not repeat this stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, totally. Like, we're having sometimes conversation with my wife and she's like, oh, can you imagine what might happen if we were doing that? And I was like, who cares? We didn't do that.
Right.
Like, why I should even imagine, why I should even fantasize about that? She was like, oh, but it would be interesting. But if I didn't do that, I won't be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but still, like I'm thinking a lot about like when I was small kid, I learned Japanese and I liked it very much. And I was
Mm-hmm.
going to this language school, and then our teacher went to qualification stuff and never returned. And they started sending some students to us, and like the whole learning of the language went down. And my parents decided, okay, so he'll be learning math and physics. And I'm
Wow.
always thinking like, and I still love more languages than like I'm rather good at math. I'm not super good at physics, but I understand how the world works. It's enough. And see, I'm still thinking like, what might have happened if I were continue learning Japanese? Like, I don't know. And nobody knows. But
Yep.
yeah, definitely something to regret. It's a good way to have it.
But you're here, right? So I tell people all of the choices, regrets make you who you are today. And it's
Yeah, exactly.
how you deal with them, right? Some people get stuck in them. I saw an example of watching somebody who's been stuck in their regrets, and you can tell, right? They don't enjoy the moment. They have a hard time finding any reason to smile and to be part of what's going on right now. And that makes you sad. That made me sad, right? I was like, oh, that's sad. It was like, but it was a good reminder to me, yeah, it's okay to have regrets or ask, what if, right? But what if doesn't exist anymore? That opportunity has passed. I've done that with jobs. I've done that with people. They're like, well, what if we were still friends? Well,
Yeah.
what if we were, but we're not, right? And that's part of, growing up with a dual cultural home is that Americans tend to get stuck in the past or the future, but the Guyanese are very much present people. Like today is what exists, right?
Hmm.
Today, there's nothing you can do about the past. You can try to fix the future, but you can't, there's only given today. And so I think that's stuck around as I've worked through things, which I will say corporate America is not always like well received. I'm like, well, we're here. And they're like, well, we need to, run down everything we did wrong. And I'm like, sure, but like, let's celebrate a little bit of what we achieved, not just tear it all apart. So sometimes it can be, my attitudes don't fit with everybody else in the room, but that's okay. That's okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or
I
who
mean,
knows? You never
I
know.
want to be like on a yacht, right? Like, I don't know where. I mean, if you're asking me to be fancy, like I should be on my massive yacht in the, Caribbean Sea or something. But I doubt that's going to be the case. And so I was like, yeah, I always liked those questions. When I first started my first grown-up job, as I called it, we were in a room. I don't even know why they had this round table, but it was fine. It was cool to get to know people. And my boss was like, well, what do you want to do here in 5 years? Right. I was like,
Hmm.
I have no idea. Like, I was like, I want to be the CEO. Right. And they
Yeah.
were like, well, that's bold. And I was like, well, that's the biggest position in the company. Right. So why should I want to be the CEO of the company? Was I? No. But at the same time, if you want to look forward, think big. Why not? But yeah, it was funny. I was like, wait, I didn't want to be the CEO, but at the time it fit. But now, no, that's not my jam. No, I'm good there. I don't have to be the CEO anymore.
Tell me more about your family Christmas book.
Oh, my family Christmas book. So that's actually me and my wife's tradition. And so we both love to go to thrift stores. We grew up going to these places. Her family loves a good thrift store. Her little brother is actually working part time now at one. And we're both. She's very much somebody who loves sustainability. So like instead of buying new, if we can buy used or like thrift it, find it. Um, that's a big thing for her. So I like shopping. So that's where the two work, right? Where she was like, okay, you don't need brand new stuff. Let's go. So we were just thrifting and there's this book. It was read. I love Christmas. Christmas is my holiday. So I was like, look, it's a Christmas book. And then I opened it thinking that people had like filled it in because sometimes at their stores you get, people's writings and stuff. It was blank. I was so excited. So I was like, for $2, I was like, well, we're going to go home and we're going to fill this out every year after the holidays. And so we do. We collect if we got any cards that year, put them in there. And what's really fun is we do it around my birthday, which is around January 5th. Well, it's on January 5th. Around January 5th, we'll fill out our Christmas book.
Wait, wait,
And it's
wait.
actually,
January 5th? Your birthday on January 5th?
yeah, my birthday's January 5th.
Okay, my wife's birthday on January 5th.
What? Oh my goodness. Yes. I've only met like two other people with this birthday. We are obviously meant to be besties. But that's
One
awesome.
day, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Tell her you met somebody else with her birthday because we get excited. January babies just get left out of things. But yeah, the Christmas book was blank. And so we made a tradition of it. And I think this year was year 5 or 6 of filling out the Christmas book. But it's that time where we spend just looking over the past year and seeing, the highlights, if people have passed on, all of these things that you don't think about in the day to day, But now we go back and then we read all of the previous years, see all the cards, see who's still around, who may not be, and fill it out with all the fun stuff that we get to do, and some sad stuff too. But just because those are important to note. So it's kind of like a little, I guess, like a little anthology of our lives for the past couple of years. But I will never be more thrilled than opening it and finding it blank so I could fill it in myself. I was like, whoever paid for this in 1975 is going to get their ROI in 2022. I'm finally coming back to them. But yeah, that's our little tradition, is the Christmas book.
Are you filling this book together or by
Yeah.
your own?
Oh no, yeah, we sit down together. We go back and forth who gets to write, right?
Mhm.
So some years it's her handwriting, some years it's mine. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. So there are things in there because one, I'm a horrible scrapbook person. So like I love collecting things, but it's never getting into a scrapbook. So this is actually a helpful way to get all of that stuff in one place. But yeah, we go back and forth. So I think next year she gets to be the one who writes it all down. But I will say there's been a year or two where she just hands me the pen and we just, go with it. But it's a good time that day, and then we put it back. And so it's getting pretty thick. I gotta find like a rubber band or something for all the stuff inside of it. But we have another 20 years to go before the Christmas book is filled up. So hopefully we'll be here filling out the Christmas book in 20 years.
I have more questions, but I just can't avoid asking you about those dinosaurs behind you.
Oh,
So,
oh, on the wall, the little
yeah.
dinosaurs.
What about
Oh,
those
I,
dinosaurs?
so
What are their story?
the little dinosaurs. So we love to travel, but we don't say just big adventures are important. We say little adventures are important too. So going to like county fairs, or going to farmers markets, things. I make little adventures out of everything. So like this weekend we're going to go to the tulips, and go pick tulips. That's an adventure, right? And so we like to pick up art, usually not super expensive art, stuff that you could pick up easily. And we love dinosaurs. So like if there's ever a dinosaur, I'm buying that. There's a whole thing with me and my brother, but these two little guys at the bottom are hand-drawn dinosaurs, like with cool patterns on the inside, from a lady who just liked doing that, was selling it at one of the farmers places we went to. And the other is a, can't remember his name, and that's making me sad right now. He's an artist, and I was in Amsterdam last year, and I just picked up a print from the MoCo, which is their contemporary art gallery. So it's nothing fancy, but yeah, I've always liked his work, and I don't know why I'm blanking on his name because usually I can remember. But yeah, we like dinosaurs. So and it's weird, but my wife loves. She's got a dinosaur sweater, and me and my brother. We like the T-Rex, so we have a little dance that we do together for the T-Rex. And so, yeah, I don't know where dinosaurs came up in our lives, but here we are. I got a couple of dinosaurs everywhere. And I also love patterns. So colors, patterns, those things they attract my eye. But this is a recent accomplishment, this wall. And I know it's missing a picture over here, but
Maybe.
maybe not. Actually, I took the frame down to paint it red so it would match everything else. I just need to put it back up. I was like, I wonder how long people have noticed that this picture's not here. But we didn't have anything framed. So when I took time off from work, I just sat down and I did it. Right? I was like, okay, now it's going on the wall. And every picture up there is something either somebody gave us or something from our travels. But the upper one that will go back up is a quote that says, "Where's your will to be weird?" So to remind us to have a little silly fun every once in a while.
Why do you like dinosaurs?
I don't know. I mean, granted, we are the Jurassic Park generation, so maybe that's just it.
Got it.
But yeah, I love dinosaurs. Anytime something comes up, if there's like a new dinosaur, I find myself getting excited. But they're also just fascinating, right? They're like a species that lived well before us, and we're like, the big thing on Earth. And then now they're not. But yeah, me and my brother, we love T-Rexes. We think they're hilarious with their little arms. And so if I could get him to do it, we'll have a little T-Rex tattoo at some point, just to, with the little "trying to survive," quote under it. He's like, we should put a meteor coming down. getting morbid on this tattoo, but I like it. But no real reason. My wife loves dinosaurs too. Or it could just be being a millennial as well. We do tend to look for the nostalgic things too.
Tell me about Emery Kids Adventure. What is it?
Mm. So my brother and I, when we get together and have little adventures, he wasn't always in a good place to have adventures all the time. And so as anytime we could do something together, we lived in the same town for a long time. But like, yeah, every time we get to go, it's just us. So then it is an Emery Kids adventure. It's just me and him. There's no wife, there's no current partner for him, or any of our friends or anything. And so we just did our first big Emery Kids adventure. I took him to the Netherlands for the first time. He had never been to Europe. And it was right before I left my job, and I had been slated to go to their conference. So even though they didn't pay for it, I ended up saying, okay, we had some room for me to be able to still take B to the Netherlands. And so it's our hashtag. We've done little things. We've gone to Las Vegas together. We've gone and done little activities, adventures, gone to the beach and stuff like that. But it's a good way for me and him to connect. So now it's a tradition. Once a year, we're going to go have a big adventure. And since we live so far away, that's a good tradition to have. And keep him. He is my, don't tell him, but like third best friend, just because, he is my brother. So he has to rank down a little bit. But he is not too much younger than I am. So we're very close.
Being a third best friend is rather okay, I would say.
Right? It's not too bad, right?
Yeah.
He does annoy me. So minus a few points. But yeah, if I ever need that man, he is there, no questions asked. So I can't, and he, like I say, he's also got his stuff that he deals with, but when it comes to our relationship, we're pretty tight. So yeah, Every Kid's Adventure is just my little hashtag. Keep him accountable on the internet.
If you see something crazy going on, it's just Emery Kids Adventure.
It's just Kids Adventure time. That's all.
Yeah.
Mom has no idea, right? She's like, what? No, nothing.
Okay. What part of you is a child on the inside?
Ooh, that's a deep question. You're going, wow. Something I've always done, and this is something why I also love my wife to death, is I'm a huge reader. So I love nonfiction, like don't get me wrong, all that good stuff, professional books and all of that good stuff too is great. But I find myself always wanting to escape into other people's worlds that they made up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been this way, right? Like my dad instilled a very deep love of reading. And so if you can give me a book, that was my favorite thing to do as a kid, was to sit down and read. And I would read voraciously. Like it didn't matter what it was or if it was age appropriate. I was there reading it to learn about different places and stuff like that. So I have this curiosity that comes out in everything that I do, because I want to ask why. I want to know, what are you doing? Why do you exist this way? Why are these people in this book this way? And so that curiosity has led to learning about different cultures and religions. And, because reading a book in one context is helpful, but until you know more, you don't really understand the whole context, right? So yeah, that's something you'll always find me. And I'm also the annoying person who asks why. So like a toddler, I'm like, but why? Right? Like, why are we doing this? What's going to happen next? And so I think it's the curiosity. I'm just always looking around and wanting to ask questions. But yeah, I also like to have a little bit of fun. And people, as you get older, people are like, well, you should be more serious. And I'm like, really? I don't know. My life's pretty short on the space rock, so we're not going to take it too seriously. But yeah, have a little bit of fun, but always curious. Those are parts of me I'll never put to sleep. I don't care how adulting I get. We're not doing that.
I'm always saying that adults are just grown-up kids. So with just more problems on their way.
Right.
But in general, like I have a kid, and like, if he is allowed to do something, why I am not? Like,
right? Like, why would he get to do that?
it's just not fair, Like,
right. Why can't I want to sit down in public and scream?
Yeah.
Well, that's just an example, but more like those little moments where they're exploring the world, or they get to ask you why, right? Why can't I ask other people why?
Yeah.
How old is your son?
11 already. And it's a lot of questions,
Mhm.
and sometimes I have no answers. And sometimes I'm answering go Google it, but I'm trying to avoid this answer
Mm,
because it's like kind of like get off,
yep.
like go Google it, get off. Like it's very similar. And I'm trying to Google it myself
Yeah.
and then to have this conversation because it's much more interesting. But also I'm trying to teach my kid to Google it because
Mhm.
I'm totally sure that nowadays you don't have to know everything, but you have to know how to find this information. So
Exactly.
if you can't Google, what are you doing here? Like
Right? No, that's
or at
awesome.
least talking to ChatGPT. I don't know. So
Right? Ask somebody a question. Right? My dad was the same way. I mean, I now in retrospect is because as parents you don't know everything, right? Or maybe sometimes he was a. My mom was a little bit more forward facing. Like she did, okay, we're gonna have a discussion about this. But my dad would be like, you could tell he now that I know, he would be like, go look it up, right? And this is before Google. Google was Google around, so it was us looking at encyclopedias or looking in the dictionary for the definition of a word.
yeah,
And he said the same thing. At some point, I may not be here for you to ask questions to, or maybe the people around you won't know. So you have to go find it out for yourself. But yeah, as parents, I always bow down to parents. Like you all don't know everything. I have no idea half the time, so I can't imagine how to answer all of those questions. And
and
11's a big age.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's even good, because like it's always a conversation starter. Like if you don't know something, like let's find out together. Like let's
Yep.
do it. I don't know, let's do it. You
Yeah.
know,
Let's
and
go figure it out.
I wish people in corporate world saying this, and because when you're just asking somebody like, or like your CEO or somebody asks you like you have to do this, like okay,
Right.
I will do
Right.
it.
Yep.
And why can't we answer like I don't know, let's do it together. Like
Right? I don't know, so let's figure it out together. Right? If people were more collaborative that way, right? To have the curiosity of a child, but not just the curiosity, but they want to work with you. Like your son's going to come back to you and be like, well, I Googled it. Now let's
yeah,
talk about it. Right? And you're over there like furiously Googling yourself. But like at the same time, I don't think I like that approach, right? Let's work on it together. We can learn something, both of us, along the way. Maybe we
yeah.
should just run a corporate company together, right? I'm just like,
Who knows? Who
OKR,
knows?
schmokrs, you know?
Let's find out together. Yeah.
Right. Don't tell your wife I'm like roping you into like running a business with like who? No. No.
But at least you share the same birthday, So
Right, exactly. I got
yeah,
my foot in the door and now, business plans can come next.
got it. So, what is your favorite place to escape from books?
Ooh. Um I don't know. It's a hard question because I read a lot of different things. So it really depends on the month. So I'm not ashamed of this. Currently, I'm working my way through a romance novel series, right? It's nothing super sassy. Like there's no, salacious scenes and all of that. It's just decently well written romance novels I could read in about a day or two and feel like I'm, getting that escape, but also I don't have to sit down and think about it, right? Like right now, I don't want to sit down and think about the deep thoughts of life when I read a book. So yeah, and I also found these at the library sale, all in a series, and like you can never find those. So like now my wife is like, well, you have to read all of them. I was like, oh yeah, we'll be done soon, so they could move off the bookshelf. But yeah, I like I do love a good horror novel. My wife has gotten me into fantasy. I did pick up the first book of Game of Thrones at a bookstore the other day. It looks really big, but I was like, we're gonna give it a try, right? Like we're just gonna try it. There are some books on my bookshelf that are more, we gave that a try. We don't like that. Um, but I find myself recently also, if I want to think, looking at the history. So, being part of the LGBTQIA community, I'm currently reading, even though there are problematic parts to it, the history of the AIDS history of like how that worked, how that happened in America and stuff like that. Because I think it's important to know where we come from too. So you have a couple of those on there. It's called The Band, and The Band Plays On. It was published in the 80s. There's been some stuff refuted in it since, but it's still a good like overview of what had happened. Because I was like, well, I am part of this community, right? But I never truly identified until later in life as being part of this community. So didn't get a lot of the knowledge. Wasn't, especially in the Deep South, exposed to queer ideology or the LGBTQIA community. You knew people, but there wasn't this sense of pride about it,
Yeah.
right? So I wanted to be proud of this community that I'm part of and where we came from and how we can help avoid some of these things moving forward. Absolutely fascinating. It's huge and written like a newspaper article, right? So it can be a lot. There are a lot of names, a lot of places and stuff too. But yeah, that's for what I want to do, the heavy thinking. And then I got my romance novels on the other side of that spectrum. But yeah, anytime anybody gives me a book, I'm going to give it a try because you gave me that book and you think it's important. But yeah.
Do you read one book after finishing another book, or maybe you can read some of them like parallel?
Parallel, yeah. I used to be better at reading parallel, like, at the same time. But it really, yeah, finding it now, it really depends on the mood. But yeah, like I'm currently reading The Band Plays On along with the romance novels. But I will take a little break, right? Be like, okay, this is a really tough subject. So maybe I'll take like a week off, read something that's a little bit easier. My current one though is I started the Interview with the Vampire series by Anne Rice and like obsessed. The show that just came on was amazing. I've always been a big fan, but I started reading it now as an adult and I was like, this is the most whiny vampire that I have ever met, which is Louis. He's like one of the main characters. So I had to stop. I was like, I can't. I was like, he's a vampire. He should be not like, mean or anything. But I told my wife, she was like, yeah, that's a really hard one. She's like, you probably read it like a decade or two ago. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I just didn't realize he was so whiny. So I had to put it down and I went back to my romance novel. But I'm gonna go back and finish it up. But yeah, I tend to have multiple going, even if I'm not reading them all exactly at the same time.
What is your favorite flower?
Ooh, this is a good question. I lived in Charleston, so there wasn't always a lot of flowers because it's either very hot or everything is just dead, right? So
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of seasons. But when we moved to Virginia, we discovered seasons. So like you actually have a winter, you have a spring, a fall, and this place is filled with flowers, like during the spring. So I became obsessed, finding out different types of flowers. My all-time favorite flower will have to be the tulip. I just like tulips. They're pretty. You can have fluffy tulips, you can have regular tulips, and Virginia is known for their tulips. And it actually makes sense if you look on a map, right, around the world. It's the right climate. But anything that's a big fluffy flower after that, like peonies, I love a good fluffy flower. And my favorite cherry blossoms, I can't remember the technical name for them. They come right after the traditional cherry blossoms, and they come out in these big puffs. And they start out very bright pink and then move to white, whereas the traditional cherry blossom goes from white to pink before they fall. So those are currently blooming. So everybody gets here excited about the cherry blossoms, and I'm waiting for this fluffy version to like appear. But I'd have to say tulips. And then the ones that don't make me sneeze, you can find them a lot here in the grocery stores. They're called Peruvian lilies. And they're just like little bunches. They don't flower, they don't put out a pollen. So I often have those in my house on my dining room table because I am allergic to pollen. So, but they're very cute. They last a long time, and you can get them at the grocery store. So I think those are my favorites, though.
Yeah, like my next question was why, but you already answered that. So yeah, So,
Wow.
what was the most thoughtful gift your wife gave you that comes to your mind right away?
Most thoughtful gift. Oh, see, she's so sweet. She's always bad at giving me gifts. But when I turned 30, I'm annoying. I'm an annoying woman this way. And then every once in a while I'll ask her, be like, tell me why you love me, right? And she has to come up with a new reason. Now this doesn't happen quite as often, but when we were first together, it was a running joke, right? She would never get mad. So for my 30th birthday, this one actually sat down and wrote out 30 reasons on strips of paper, and then handed them to me in this little box. And she said, anytime I'm not around and you want to know why I love you, here are these reasons. I still have them, right? Because a lot of them are recurring themes. And so, like, they haven't changed. But the fact that she does stuff like that for me, like I have all of her notes, like she'll draw little characters or these little notes, and she'd always put it somewhere that I wouldn't find it for a while. It's not like she meant for me to find it the same day. So I actually have all of those reasons, and then this little stack of love notes that aren't letters, but they're her little love notes. And they're written on post-its or receipts or weird random pieces of paper. But I carry them with me, right? They're in my wallet. So that way she's always with me wherever I am. So it's not the most exciting present, but for me, those are the things that I keep at all times. But she's not really great at buying like material things for me. So the other would be my engagement ring. She took a long time picking that out. I'll give her that in case she listens. She's like, hey, I gave you nice stuff. But what about you? I mean, your wife brought you back really cool stuff. What has she ever given you anything? I mean, besides your son, like, anything
Definitely.
that you hold cherished, that's always a good time.
Yeah, it's all about things,
Mhm.
some things. It's more about perfumes or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's always hard because sometimes she asks me like, what do you like to get? Like, and I was like, I have everything. Like,
Right.
and she's like, okay, you're not making it easier, you know?
No, no, yeah.
So yeah, but most things that I like is this old bottle opener or some stuff like that I can just use and keep it always with me. Or
Yeah.
like underpants, it's crazy, but I'm not buying underpants myself, never. So
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, you gotta get your pants, right?
it's it's always the case. Like, yeah, just go buy me some socks, like
Yeah. Do
it
you
always
like
works.
fancy socks? Or do you like printed socks, or is it just more like I need socks, like just
Uh,
regular socks?
recently for some reason more like with some, you know, pineapples on there or
Oh,
something like
nice.
that.
Yeah.
But before it was just like usual stuff, and I don't know, it depends. Sometimes it depends on the mood.
Mm.
Sometimes I want to wear some bright yellow socks.
Yep.
And sometimes like any will work. Just give me
Yep.
something. Like
Just
so
yeah.
yeah, it's a good question, but I don't really know. You know?
Thinking about
Like
your sock
I'm just I'm
psychology.
just
Yeah.
I'm just opening this like our sometimes I'm losing my English words, but I'm just opening a wardrobe and just
Mhm.
like closing my
Right.
eyes, taking some pair of socks and
Yeah.
just
Going with it.
dealing with what I have. So
Yeah, I mean, if she keeps buying you socks. That's the important part, right? You have a plenty to choose from.
yeah.
Because she listens to you. She's like, okay, well, I guess I'll buy you socks. Right. And that's the same thing with my wife. She's like, well, you don't need. I was like, I don't need anything, right? Like, you don't have to buy it. We can survive. We have what we need. But yeah, she does her best. She's like, you always give better gifts than I do. I was like, well, I was like, it's a skill.
You
Um,
know, the best gift for me,
mhm.
it's some cake. So my wife is super great in baking cakes, and like even though she's not doing this professionally,
Mhm.
like if she sees some recipe or anything, she'll do an amazing cake.
Oh,
So I'm always saying like, do me a cake.
right.
It always
Oh,
works. It always works. So
yeah. Oh, I like
and
it.
and just taste it, and you can, just have a photo of it, and you can have a gallery of those cakes, and just,
Right.
oh, I remember it was a great taste, and this one, I remember this one, I remember this one. So it's always, and she doesn't like repeating herself.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even if she's doing the same cake, she's
Uh-huh.
always finding for a new recipe.
Oh,
So
I like it.
it's
I
it's
love it.
it's so fun, and it's like I'm just like asking, like, what are you doing? I'm just looking for a recipe, but you've made this cake like 5 times. Now I'm looking for the next one. So
That's awesome. Right. She's like, I'm perfecting. I'm getting to a good place with mine. What is your favorite cake that she's made though? If
uh,
you don't mind me.
like I love Napoleon and
Okay.
cheesecake. Both are both works. And yeah, definitely Napoleon is harder to make,
Mhm.
and cheesecake is a little lighter.
Let me see. Mhm.
But anyone works for me because everyone is tasty. So
Ah, right. You're like, just make me a cake.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
just
pretty easy.
bake me a cake.
Uh, and buy some socks or maybe some underpants. I'm good. But that's what also makes people like us harder, even though we're harder to buy gifts for, those smaller things. Like she brought back a keychain for you, right? My best friends do that with me, not just my wife, but like my friend. They know I like tiny things, like small things. So if you're like, here's a tiny mustard, right? Like you could get it at a restaurant or something. I am just thrilled, right? Because it's tiny. So on our shelf is a bunch of little tiny things that people have brought back, and they're like, "I just thought of you, and it was tiny, and it has nothing to do with what I was doing, but it was small, right?" And I'm like, "Yes." And people crack up. They're like, "Why do you like tiny things?" Like, I don't know, but I like it. So my friend brought back a little tiny metal whale from Maine. Like it has nothing to. She was like, "I just saw it, and I thought of you," and I'm like, "Good." I like tiny things. And people are like, you get so excited for it. And I'm like, well, yeah, you thought about me. I was like, I like it. Right? So you don't have to give me big shiny objects. I like the little things. Just
It's
like
a
you
little,
like
it's
your
a
socks.
little shiny objects.
Yeah, little
I-
shiny objects. Now I am a magpie. If it is shiny, I'm like, ooh. So I will say that. It does go with my sparkly personality. I do love a shiny object. But yeah, I find those little things to be good things. Little gifts are not bad either.
For you, what is the difference between being kind to yourself and to others?
Ooh. Um, That's a good question. Being kind to others tends to be a lot easier for me, right? Given what I've done and just who I am as a human being, it feels good to be kind to other people. But that also sometimes requires you not to be so kind to yourself or have to put on, I call it the mask, right? Like you might be dealing with something in life or wherever that's taking a toll on you. Like you've got to be dealing with that, but then you see others uh, maybe dealing with worse things, right? I used to have a horrible habit of saying, well, they're dealing with something much worse, right? I need to put myself aside and help them. But what that leads to is that you don't take care of yourself. Like you don't look at what you are dealing with, and how it's affecting you. So being kind to myself is sometimes having to take that space back for myself and say, I'm dealing with something big right now. Instead of focusing outward, I need to focus inward. And the people that I surround myself with are very good at reminding me about this because I've supported them so much that like they are good at now reminding me that they're there to support me too, right? And that they're better at identifying when they know I'm not taking care of being kind to myself. um but I've also learned how to recognize that myself. Like I won't be kind to myself physically. I've always been a plus size girl, but exercise is very important to me. So if I'm not exercising, I'm not moving, I'm not being active, I'm letting myself get sedentary, or I spend more time on my phone than I do dealing with whatever issues. Procrastination is another thing of mine where people know I'm going through something. Like things aren't getting done, right? Phone calls are going unanswered, except for grandma. You can't ignore grandma more than once. But those things, right? And so then that's when I know I have to take a step back and be kind to me because something is going on, and either I'm not willing to deal with it or I need to deal with it. But also just in general, I've learned you got to be kind to yourself, not just at the big things, but the little things. So if I'm having a bad day, it's okay to have a bad day. It's not the end of the world. I don't always need to be smiling at everybody, right? It's okay to be sad, or it's okay to answer honestly if somebody says, well, you seem down today, what's going on? And it's okay to be honest. Sometimes people don't know how to deal with the honesty, but that's okay. You asked. I'm
Yeah.
going to share. But of putting myself, to me, putting yourself where you can deal with those things and be kind is the ultimate form of self-care. Um, but yeah, I've learned to notice the sides well before now. But I think that comes with age and experience too, right? The 22-year-old Shannon couldn't have done that. She wouldn't have known what those signs were, or that she was putting too much energy into everybody else instead of herself. But I always tell people, take some space, be kind to you, and then go do something you like to do, something that makes you happy, something that makes you smile, or just lay in bed and cry. Like, it's okay. That can be it
Both
too,
work.
right?
Yeah.
Or have cake, right? And then eat the cake. So that's what I tell people. It doesn't have to be like, oh, big, fluffy, happy. It could be, I'm just dealing with it right now, and that's okay. You know? So be kind to yourself, people out there, in the way that makes sense for you. Not everything works for everybody, and a face mask does not solve all the problems. Like I get told that a lot. Self-care, skincare, and all of this. I'm like, yeah, those are nice, but we still got to deal with the problems. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of things to work on, like, go be kind to yourself. And people like, yeah, okay, but and
Right. It's
and
always
then
the
like,
but.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Shannon, I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit.
Okay.
So let's jump to the rapid fire questions.
Okay. Cool.
Day or night?
Night.
Silence or conversation?
Silence.
What are your favorite color and song?
Ooh, my favorite color is red. Um, I'm such a music nerd. What was the song? Okay, so this is really weird. A song I will listen on repeat for all of the end of time is Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve. No real reason except that I like it. Yeah, that's it. I don't know what reason.
You told me a little about your superpower, but still, if you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Oh, it's a dorky superpower. Now, if we're going straight superhero, I would say probably the ability to fly everywhere. That'd be great. But my normal superpower, or what I consider it, is being able to make people feel comfortable and included. Because I think I've encountered that, so I always like to make people feel included.
I feel like it's the best superpower you might think of.
Not bad, not bad.
Who do you learn from in the community world? Name one person.
Oh, oh no.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Right. You're breaking me with this one. It's a video that I've learned from a lot, and always look up to is Marjorie Anderson. Marjorie has been a big fan of mine and vice versa for a long time, and she never hesitates with her time, her expertise, and her point of view is always amazing. And she also doesn't feel like, she doesn't make you feel bad when she provides feedback. She wants to work with you on it. So if you're listening, Marjorie, you're pretty awesome, my friend.
Name two people who I should definitely have this community life conversation with.
Ooh, that's a good question. If you haven't, and this is me not looking at all your content, definitely Marjorie. A Black woman's point of view in this industry is fascinating, right? And then I'd say he's like I call him my favorite tall white dude. His name's Paul Bradley. Paul is just the nicest person that you could talk to about community, and he tries to support you and he cheers you on. And I was a little suspicious because he was just so nice. And then I was like, oh wait, you're actually like a real person. But he tries his hardest, right? And it's always, and he always goes to the bat for his teams and stuff like that. So I would chat with him too. He is more corporate, right? But like at the same time, he's just a lot of fun to talk with as well.
Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Ooh, so I tell people ask this question all the time. What kind, if you were a sandwich, what kind of sandwich would you be and why? So, not that you have to ask, that's just a fun question. Like I said, have a little fun, right? But I like to ask that question and people get all excited. 'Cause what kind of sandwich would you be if you were one?
So, what kind of sandwich would you be?
Ooh, so it sounds a little boring, right? But there are reasons. So it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So, but it all depends on the day, what type of jam or jelly it is, and whether or not the peanut butter is crunchy or creamy. So even though it looks normal on the outside, you could have a little bit of surprise on the inside. And I'm a little versatile. Like I like to try different things and stuff. What about you? What would you
Yeah,
be?
for me it's super easy. It's just some bread, some butter, and some honey.
Ooh, nice.
It's like the best sweet thing you can have if you have nothing at home, you know? Like you
Right.
always have butter, you always have honey, always sometimes you have bread so you can like mix it up.
Like a little
And you
thing.
know,
Yeah.
it's really fun, but like it's super obvious in the US culture, the peanut butter
Mhm.
jelly sandwich, but I
Yep.
have no ideas what it is. So like and I
Oh,
bet that the first day I will come to the US, I will try it. I will taste it.
I always forget that yeah, that's not prevalent over there. It's peanut butter, right? Like the actual peanut butter itself. I may have to send you some. It's delicious. But yeah, I tell people one, you gotta make sure you're not allergic to peanuts, but
Yeah, no,
otherwise,
it's okay.
you
So
know,
no
yeah.
worries at all. Right.
So I might have to send you a crunchy, and they have it crunchy where it has the bits of peanut, and then creamy, which is just the really creamy version. So we'll have to connect about that afterwards. We'll follow up offline.
Okay, okay. I'm sending you an email. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll put that on the calendar, peanut butter delivery date. But yeah, no, definitely. But if you ever are over here, come try peanut butter. I love peanut butter. We don't eat as much as we used to, but like it's got a lot of calories in it. I will say that. But
Got it. You know, Shannon, when I was going through your Twitter, I thought that it would be an amazing conversation, and that's exactly how it was. So, yeah, like so much fun. You're so open person, so funny and shiny person that like I just enjoyed our conversation so much. And you really did what you promised. So you turned questions sometimes, and I even had an opportunity to talk. So thank you very much for that.
you're welcome. I don't want to, I love talking about myself. I mean, not love. That's a very bold American statement. I don't mind talking about myself, but hey, if I'm talking with you, let's learn about you too, right? Um, Otherwise, it's just me talking at the screen. Nobody wants that. If you want that, come to a webinar I'm doing, right? Where I tell you about community.
Put it on your calendar.
Yeah, we'll put it on the calendar. Just Shannon talks at you for an hour. It's a good time. But yeah, no, thank you for the conversation today. This was a lot of fun. And we didn't talk really much about community. So that's my favorite conversation of the day. Yes, like it. And the double thumbs up. I'm here for this.
It's always like cheer
Always.
up.
Right?
I
Uh,
always do this one, you know, like I even have a t-shirt.
oh, nice. Like a high five. Yes.
Yeah, some
Uh,
people say that I want to slap somebody, but yeah, it's all about high five. It's not about slapping anyone. But you never know,
uh,
you never know.
context, right?
It
Like you're like,
depends on the context. Yeah.
maybe today it is slapping somebody.
So
uh,
so Shannon,
right.
thank you very much for an amazing conversation and see you in the community world.
Awesome. Thank you so much as well. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friends. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.